Dave Rubin says that Jordan Peterson follows his own rules in his book 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah, and just very briefly, just from being on tour with Jordan, I told you this backstage, but I never saw the guy break one of the 12 rules. I mean, try to imagine how chaotic his life was in the course of this becoming a massive star, traveling all over the world, the book sales, the celebrity, the entire thing, and he never broke one of those 12 rules.
But the 10th rule is be precise in your speech, and that's a rule he pretty frequently breaks. I watched a lot of Peterson's psychology lectures before he became infamous, and I thought they were quite good. He's actually pretty good at communicating ideas that are not his own. So I decided to look up his own original work and found a TEDx talk that he did, which by the way is often a red flag. TEDx talks are frequently crackpot garbage, and disappointingly it was rambly woo nonsense. For another example, when Matt Dillahunty told Peterson that there's no evidence of the supernatural, Peterson said that folks who take psilocybin and had a mystical experience were then able to quit smoking, and that this is kinda like evidence.
But if you give people magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and they have a mystical experience, they have about an 85% chance of smoking cessation with one treatment. But that's kind of like evidence, you know.
Wow, what precision. When pressed on this very silly assertion, he said, "It depends on what you mean by supernatural." Well, why don't you start by telling us what you mean by supernatural, oh precise one? And when he was interviewed by the New York Times, something that a lot of people remember from that interview is Peterson's view that involuntary celibates would be better off if society had enforced monogamy. By using this term, he made it sound as though he wants the government to force people to be monogamous. That's how a lot of people seem to interpret it. He later had to clarify that what he really meant, which he would not have had to do if he had spoken more precisely in the first place, that he only wanted monogamy to be enforced by social pressure instead of law.
What do you mean by enforced monogamy?
Well, we could start by what I don't mean. I don't mean taking innocent women at gunpoint and handing them over to useless men, which is essentially the accusation.
Peterson defenders said that he was taken out of context, which is something they seem to say quite often. However, it seems to me that there should be an inverse relationship between how precisely a person speaks and how easy it is to take them out of context. I suspect that what Peterson had in mind when he brought up enforced monogamy was that if the most attractive men, the alpha chads, stuck to just one woman each, then other women who wanted to be with them would have to settle for men they find less attractive, and Peterson imagines this would trickle down the attractiveness hierarchy to eventually benefit the involuntary celibates at the bottom. At least this is what I infer he meant. It's hard to tell because he speaks so precisely. He later went on Joe Rogan's show and explained that the reason he wants to keep the chads from hoarding the attention of women, which even Joe pointed out seems hard to square with his opposition to many efforts to prevent people from hoarding wealth, because it's better for children if guys don't do it with lots of ladies. But then what does this have to do with benefiting the involuntarily celibate? That was the context in which enforced monogamy was brought up in the first place. Peterson speaks so precisely that it's hard to tell exactly what he thinks one has to do with the other. It's almost become a cliche for Peterson fans to respond to criticism of him by saying that you don't understand him unless you've watched several hours of his lectures and read his books. Because if a guy can't be understood unless you've watched him talk for dozens of hours and read every book he's written, then clearly he must speak very precisely. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.